Remember to like and subscribe.
So you just press and hold the macro like till it turns yellow, lock the console, and then unlock the console and see what happens.
Console lock. And that should be saved, and now, works beautifully, my friend. So now this third one, I'm gonna hit record, and now I'm gonna add these first two, 1 and 2. And done record. Now, if I bring everything back, when I hit this third macro, it should do what the both macros did. So it's stacking both of those macros together, and it works beautifully. Drop a macro in there, press record. Now, the select buttons, like if I hit this and moved it around, or for some reason this button, then back to home, but I wanted these, stop. Now, I'm gonna let Andy look at what's in here.
Yeah, you see you got bank selects and things. Now, maybe you want that. Maybe you do want it to change banks when you press the button. That's great. But you may not. You may go, oh, no, all I really wanted to do was move that fader. So you can just go in there, edit those out, and delete them. So if you're ever recording a macro and you're pressing it and going, well, shit, it's changing the screen. I don't want to do that. Then you can go in there and fix those things. Now the cool thing is if you select any channel on the console and then press that macro, it'll set the high pass filter on that channel. So you can imagine, well, go ahead and try it and see how that works. I can't see your Stream Deck, so you just let me know when you're...
It works great.
Cool. So you can imagine a situation where you might want to set default mixes or something. Let's say you wanted to turn on a mix and set it to a certain level for a bunch of channels, or maybe you wanted to set an EQ for each channel. I was thinking of getting really advanced. Maybe you had a button, Stream Deck full of buttons, that each button is a different type of instrument. One's a vocal, one's a kick drum, one's a different type of lav, different sort of things, sort of like you would use channel libraries, but then you just select the channel, hit the macro, or hit the Stream Deck button, and it would kind of set all those parameters the way you want. So things like that would be kind of cool and handy, I think. But anyway, lots of functionality once you start using that selected channel feature in there.
That was really cool, right? Stream Decks are exploding with popularity, and with their increase in popularity comes a huge demand for new capabilities. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine named Andy BROUGHTON and his unique build for Companion that comes with a brand new instance to control Yamaha CL and QL digital consoles. Andy is a software developer and an audio engineer, and he is responsible for taking the original Yamaha SCP instance and improving on it. His new instance can control, automate, and create macros for pretty much every conceivable parameter within a Yamaha CL or QL digital console. Best of all, it is absolutely free on his website. So, let's take a look at what it is, what it can do, how you can use it. Honestly, the only limitations here are your imagination.
Hey, just want to take a second to give a big shout out to all the guys on the Companion Slack group, all those great programmers that write all those other modules. They've been super helpful teaching me all about JavaScript, how to make the modules work better, how to do things that I didn't even know how to do with Companion. They work hard and they do it all for free. So BitFocus and the Companion group, thank you so much.
So ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet my good friend, Andy BROUGHTON. And how's it going, Jay? It's good. I love the instances you've written for the Stream Deck. So today we want to showcase the instance that is directly from you, directly on your website. And I want you to kind of elaborate, what is the difference between the one that is already on Companion and the one that we can get directly from you?
Okay, well, the Companion, one that you can get with Companion is called SCP, and that's a format that Yamaha came up with, that the CL, QL, and the TF talk. It's similar to OSC, it's text-based, and there was an SCP module with Companion that I rewrote and updated to allow for additional functionality. And it's, like I said, it's available within the Companion. The MIDI module that I created allows for additional flexibility, more commands. The SCP functions are limited to things like channels on off, faders, mixes, things like that. You can't get into the real nitty gritty like the channel strip settings, EQ settings, compressor settings. A lot of other functions aren't available in the SCP format. That's just the way Yamaha did it. So I created this MIDI module which does a lot more. Pretty much every function that's available on the console is available through this MIDI system. But because I wanted to make it like a if you think about MIDI learn systems, anybody that's worked with MIDI and knows about learn, it records while you're creating your buttons. And because of that, the way I did that, it required me to rewrite some of the internal companion functionality, and for that reason, that MIDI module is only available on my website. It couldn't be incorporated directly into the companion because it changes some of the.
So I want to address this soon, and I want to hit it multiple times. What's your website?
My website is www.checkcheck12.com. So see, all spelled out.
In the description below, a link directly to Mr. BROUGHTON's website.
That's right. CheckCheckONETWO.com. Just like the sound man I am, check 1 2.
And just like you were saying, I've used the previous module before, and now that I know you and I've worked directly with you, I've used your MIDI module, and the functionality is ridiculous with what I can create with macros.
Yeah, we had some fun the other day playing with some of the different things that we can do, and because it's got a lot of, it's essentially every command that's available in the Yamaha's there. There's a lot of things that we just sort of think of doing at the time and go, well, maybe try this and then maybe try that. And you and I were playing with the GPI functions, and then we tried stacking some things, and there was a whole bunch of cool functions that you just can't do with the SCP module. So I think the MIDI module is a really cool thing to try out.
Okay, cool. So next, Andy's going to drive me through how to set this up and some cool things it can do, and as if I'd never touched one before. So I'm going to share my screen.
Cool.
Okay.
So are we going to assume that you've downloaded it already?
Yeah, we're going to assume the audience knows what a Stream Deck is. They're familiar with Companion.
Companion. Yeah, there's lots of videos on how to use Companion though.
So, as you guys can see here in my folder, I have the regular Companion app here, but there's a different one directly from Andy and his website. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so it's a build that I created, but it does include all of the regular companion modules. So if you're using QLab and other different modules that you like to use, those are all still in there, and I try to update it regularly whenever companion updates. So the only difference between my module and the module that you can get on the website is that mine will include the MIDI functions, although it's also probably more up to date than the one that you download from BitFocus, because BitFocus probably doesn't update their main file as often as I do. So you're kind of getting bleeding edge there.
I'm going to go into my Andy file. I'm going to load this Companion build directly from Mr. BROUGHTON. And it's going to be exactly the same as normal. But standard stuff.
Yeah.
That's just because I ripped this laptop off and took it to the job site where I reconfigured it. Cool.
So it's already there.
Okay, you see there, status okay. And then just so you guys can see here, in the edit, right here is where I put my IP address in. And as Andy, you can already see, I changed this from 128 to 129.
I wanted to do a quick voiceover so I don't confuse anybody. I changed mine to 129 because I'm running multiple networks. Most people are going to use the stock IP address on the console, which is 192.168.0.128.
Yeah, just a note that if you change and you click the use editor, you can use the editor as well as the console to do stuff offline. But I find that you tend to have to disable the instance and then re-enable it when you make those kind of changes. So if you're ever having problems where you're just not even getting a connection or anything, try disabling it and re-enabling the module to get it to work again. But the cool thing is you can set up some of your Stream Deck stuff offline using the editor, as well as using it with the console. There's different functions that are available in the editor there's more functions available on the console than there is in the editor, but that's it's still handy to be able to use the editor to control it.
So you can see here status says okay, we are synced up, and then if you look in the log, if I move a fader, boom, we get
some data there showing you that the fader's moving. That little bit of information that says input fader / fader is Yamaha's own language of what they call these MIDI messages. So you'll see that some of them are kind of bizarre. Key select, enc mix. You know, these are the names that Yamaha came up with, not me. So if you've read them enough times, you can probably figure out what they are. But you'll see some strange messages in there as you do things like changing layers and stuff like that. But anyway, I just thought we would let it give you every message that's possible in case there is a message in there that you want to record, not just fader moves and things like that.
Exactly. I use it as a checks and balance on myself. If I'm having any issues, I go straight to the log.
You bet. Log is huge, and if you're ever having problems and I'm helping you with something, I'm always going to ask you, what's the log say? Because I just like to see whether the communication is happening the way we expect.
Correct. Now here in my presets, we have a macro button. This is beautiful. Simply click and drag, and as you can see, it's already populated on my Stream Deck. And now I'm going to do something simple, and then Andy's going to show me how to do something a little more complicated. So, you bet. I press record. I move a couple faders around. I press stop record, and now we have a macro. Put everything back to where it was, and when I press this macro button, ta-da, as you can see here.
Just like that.
Now, that's just a simple example. Let's give them a more complicated example. Drive me through a complicated example.
Well, just a little bit more complicated. Let's do something that switches on and off. So you want it to toggle let's say toggle a channel on and off. So to do that, instead of just pressing the record button, you press and hold the record button, and it'll turn yellow. Now turn the channel on and off, or just turn it off. Let's say do one mode.
And I put this earlier. You can do one channel, or you can do several channels, which kind of works out great. So here I did a couple on and offs. I tap it again, and now it's a simple on and off switch for all of those selected buttons.
And the cool thing is it could be some channels on and some channels off and alternating back and forth. I've had this situation where, I have a bass player plays two different basses, and as he switches basses, I want to turn one channel off and turn the other one on, just alternating back and forth. That's not so easy unless you're using scenes. It's not so easy on the console to do that, to have something alternate. But using Stream Deck, piece of cake. So now we can take a look at those macros, those buttons, if you want to click on them and take a look, and you'll see there's probably some extra stuff in there that you may not need. In this case, it actually looks pretty good. You've got the channels. Yeah, actually, this one's fine. Let's look at the first one. I'm just going to suggest that sometimes you get messages in there that you don't really care about. These are fader moves. Let's scroll down a bit. Like you'll sometimes get select functions and things like that you don't want. But that all looks good. It's just all faders. Yeah, you're good. Just a note that you sometimes get messages in there like layer changes or select changes and things like that you may not want to record. So you can easily go into your using the GUI there, go in and delete any of those messages that aren't part of the command that you want.
Show them real quick exactly what you mean. I'm used to doing this now, so I know what not to do. But drop a macro in there, press record. Now, these select buttons, like if I hit this and moved it around, or for some reason this button, then back to home, but I wanted these, stop. Now, I'm going to let Andy look at what's in here.
Yeah, you see you got bank selects and things. Now, maybe you want that. Maybe you do want it to change banks when you press the button. That's great. But you may not. You may go, oh, no, all I really wanted to do was move that fader. So you can just go in there, edit those out, and delete them. So if you're ever recording a macro and you're pressing it and going, well, shit, it's changing the screen. I don't want to do that. Then you can go in there and fix those things.
And I can always just drop another button down and right over there. Boom.
Boom, it's gone. You just cleared out that old one. So
Go ahead.
So I was going to say one of the other cool functions is because it does record selects, you can use that select function to make a macro that allows you to set a bunch of things on a channel. So you know how you use the set nominal to set the faders? You could use that to set, let's say, a high pass filter on a bunch of channels. So if we were to record a macro that just sets the high pass on a channel and sets the high pass to some frequency, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Okay. I'm going to set a high pass filter on channel number 1 to 100 hertz.
Cool. Now I'll go look at that macro. Make sure there's not extra stuff in there that we don't want. So we're going to get rid of that select function. Don't need that. We don't need the bank select either. Don't need the next select button. That volatile RTA, who knows what that is, that can go away. Boom. So all we really care about is these two here, the high pass filter and the high pass filter frequency. And same thing with the feedback. It automatically adds the feedback, so you can get rid of those additional functions there. That's it. So down to 2 things. Now, the cool thing is that's setting it for channel 1, but what if you wanted to set it for any channel? Well, if you scroll down on the channel selection there, you can go to selected channel, and if you do this, you can just type in S, and if you happen to be on a different channel, you can type in the S, and it jumps to that selected channel, and do that for these. Now the cool thing is if you select any channel on the console and then press that macro, it'll set the high pass filter on that channel. So you can imagine, well, go ahead and try it and see how that works. I can't see your Stream Deck, so you just let me know when you're...
It works great.
Cool. So you can imagine a situation where you might want to set default mixes or something. Let's say you wanted to turn on a mix and set it to a certain level for a bunch of channels, or maybe you wanted to set an EQ for each channel. I was thinking of getting really advanced. Maybe you had a button, Stream Deck full of buttons, that each button is a different type of instrument. One's a vocal, one's a kick drum, one's a different type of lav, different sort of things, sort of like you would use channel libraries, but then you just select the channel, hit the macro, or hit the Stream Deck button, and it would kind of set all those parameters the way you want. So things like that would be kind of cool and handy, I think. But anyway, lots of functionality once you start using that selected channel feature in there.
I love it. This is absolutely in my workflow now.
So another advanced function is the stacking.
The stacking.
Which Jay loves. The idea that, let's say you have a macro, you have a button that you've created, and you go, oh, I'd like to add just one more thing. So let's do a new macro button, and we'll put something in there, and then, so you want to record something or other, go ahead.
So on this one, I'm going to turn off channels 1 through 8. That's all this is.
Cool. And if you thought, oh, geez, I really would like to add another channel to that, well, you can't re-record the macro, but you could record a new macro. And once you start recording that macro, you can play back the first macro that you recorded, and all those functions will be stacked together.
So I'm going to hit record, and now I'm going to move these faders up here. I'm going to add, get rid of number 17. And done recording.
And play the other macro.
I messed up.
Forgot to.
Well, let's just add another macro and stack both of those.
Sure, and when you hit record, you can put those 2 macros in there first, and then add the more functionality, or you can add your new functionality and then add those other macros after.
So now this third one, I'm going to hit record, and now I'm going to add these first 2, 1 and 2, and done record. Now, if I bring everything back, when I hit this third macro, it should do what the both macros did. So it's stacking both of those macros together, and it works beautifully.
Cool. And you notice that the feedback allows you to, the button becomes an indicator to show you that something's happened. So even if you're doing it on the console itself, the feedback will show you that, okay, that last thing has been enabled. Now you can edit those feedbacks in the buttons to decide, well, maybe I don't want all those things to be showing me that that's on. I just want to know when channel 3 is on or something like that. So you can go and edit those feedbacks to get
the original macros too are still independent, because what if I just wanted that mute group? I still have my on-offs, no problem. But then if I hit the stacked macro, it's that plus every other action.
Cool. Yeah, like the idea of mute groups where you have one mute is like a mute all, another one might just be mute the wireless, another one's mute something else. You can do that same sort of function like that. But not just mutes, anything can be stacked up like that. And of course, you can always edit anything you want to edit. You just, once you get the GUI going, the idea though is that you put the Stream Deck in front of you and you're working away. You're just creating these macros on the fly as you go along, and then when you get some time later, you can go back and clean them up a bit if you need to. But you don't necessarily have to use the GUI to create your functions that you need to do. So I thought that was kind of a cool feature.
The last thing, because I mean, a lot of this is going to be up to the operator's imagination. Literally, the sky's the limit here. But we were talking a lot of Talkback conversations, and that piqued my interest a lot. So why don't you elaborate on the kind of the Talkback projects that we were having?
Right. So we were thinking about the idea that, well, a lot of people like to use the Stream Deck to control their Talkback system. So you might press a button and be able to talk to front of house, or talk to stage, or talk to backstage, or talk to an individual player on stage. Let's say everybody's on in-ears. Well, why not have a button for each person? So it just affects their mixes. It actually goes ahead and will say bring their volume down of their mix, but put your microphone to their head and you can talk to them directly, as opposed to the normal way of using Talkback where you might talk to everyone on stage at the same time. Now you can have a one-on-one conversation. But take it a step further. What if you had a Stream Deck on each mic stand? So each and it has a person's name. You can say, I want to talk to whoever it is on stage. I want to talk to my guitar tech, or I want to talk to the lighting guy.
I started designing Stream Deck mounts to go onto a mic stand.
Yes, this is a very, very cool idea. So if you used a little Raspberry Pi with your Stream Deck, which the companion works fine with, works great with Raspberry Pi, the idea that you plug the Stream Deck into the Raspberry Pi and this cool mount that Jay's working on, right on your mic stand, how cool would that be? Press a button, it turns your microphone off to the house, turns it to the backstage, or turns it to your monitor technician, whatever you want. And then we release the button, it goes back to normal again. All done within the Yamaha console, as opposed to the normal way where you'd have to use some kind of external system to do all this Talkback stuff. It could all be done.
And so the audience has a deeper understanding. Everything we showed today is all pretty basic features of what you can do. Because I can go in and write a macro to be a mix minus on 20 buses if I want it to be, with the sends in each bus being different, with the on and offs and everything being different, with the compression values being different if I want to release on a Talkback. And if I save that macro, it will save it to that depth.
Yeah, any to the nth degree. The, you know, as you say, the release time on a compressor, whatever you want, it's all available to you, as much depth as you want to go to. And I know a person who's using this Stream Deck right now to do these sort of mix minus systems where they're having meetings and they want to be able to press a button and talk to specifically one particular person at the meeting, who's on a Zoom call. You know, they're remotely talking back and forth, but not talk to everyone. And then he releases the button and is talking to everyone now. So it's changing the mixes in real time, and it's very, very powerful.
And for me, that's extremely useful because, as we've discussed before, whenever I'm doing a really huge esports show, or most in general now, I use a separate console and route all of my comms through it because I have pretty intensive communication networks. So being able to have those mix minuses on a quick button is valuable.
And so there are other apps that can do this, but the great thing about the Stream Deck is that you can program it to do just what you want it to do and nothing else. Some people have little monitor apps on their phones, which are great, but it might give you a little too much control. You might be able to do a little too many things and possibly mess somebody else up at the same time. But if you want it to just do just what you want, and even be possible to be able to disable it, things like that, that's the Stream Deck's the way to go.
If you, as the engineer, already had this programmed, you could set it up in a remote location, maybe backstage on a wall panel, and
totally with a microphone there, and it's like, oh, somebody needs to talk to somebody, just like a regular intercom, but going through an in-ear system or through a real professional audio system as opposed to just local comms, makes it so flexible.
I love it. Normally, I would have like my scene focus and fade times. I would write my automation that way. And I still do, but now I'm taking it to the next step. Because even with your instance, I can control my individual scene parameters.
Sure. And you can recall scenes as well and do all that kind of stuff. And, I don't know if we talked about this or not, you can lock the console. So you can press a button and lock the console and unlock it. We forgot to show that.
I think the lock console. Okay. I got just enough battery in the camera for lock console. Okay.
I don't know if you're going to record this right this second, but you should try a toggle and see if the toggle works, because that's the most logical way to do it.
And how would we set toggle within here? Right?
So you just press and hold the macro, till it turns yellow. Lock the console and then unlock the console and see what happens.
Console lock.
And that should be saved. And now, works beautifully, my friend.
It locks and unlocks?
It does, it does.
Sweet. Don't forget to change your macro names.
Everything. Put this. We're going to change this too.
Do you know about the \n? So if you type in lock and then a \n, the other one, and then you can do, or a lowercase n, and then you could type something else, CON or whatever. The \n means new line. Most people don't know about this. It's a built-in function that allows you to split lines. So even if you just wanted the one letter in the first line and another bunch of letters on the bottom line.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
You're teaching me something new today. So.
I didn't come up with that. Somebody else told me about this. I went, oh, that's so cool. Because maybe you want to say CH1, but you don't want channel 1 to be written side by side. You want the 1 to be on the next line down. So you can always make a new line by putting the \n inside there.
Beautiful lock button.
Isn't that neat? I got to get away from the console for a sec. Boom, it's locked. Well, I mean, you can do that on the board, but you don't have to go to that screen. This is what I love. Is that normally you got to go home. I got to go to the settings screen. I got to go to the lock console. Well, now just push a button and I'm away.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andy, appreciate you very much.
Hey, yeah, guys, I really would love to know what you're doing with the thing. This is.
Show them what you're doing.
Show me what you're doing with it. Get in touch with me on my website if you're having problems with it or you can't figure it out. I'd love to work with you. What's that?
The website one more time.
www.checkcheck12.com. All spelled out. CHECKONETWO.
Once again, the link is in the description of this video. It's the only link in the description of this video. Check it out. Andy's an awesome dude. Hit him up. Get to know him as well as I have, and you won't regret it.
Thanks, Jay.
Remember to like and subscribe.